Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's November 14th. It is the year of 2017, and those dulcet tones of the Terran tunes means it's time to learn some StarCraft. Ooh. Yeah. Terran music, the best music in all of StarCraft 1. Listen to me. Check it out. Today is the final video on Terran vs. Protoss. We've done several Terran vs. Protoss focused videos talking about some things like the core strategy of the game, the openings, how to play against carriers, how some of the micro works. And we've looked at some variations on all of these things, but as is critical whenever we're trying to learn anything, each of those are layers. And I want to see what all those layers look like at the same time, so we're just going to be reviewing a whole bunch of games to make sure we have all these concepts hammered into your head. And what I want to do is do that review and then do these replays, but let me just note that on Thursday we're beginning with a new matchup, Zerg vs. Terran. And because I'll be able to hit regularly scheduled Tuesdays and Thursday shows for the remainder of the year, we're going to be plowing through matchups like it's nothing. Oh, excellent. And I will fortunately be a man who has something other than Terran vs. Protoss focused strategy. But first, some coffee. Okay, let's hit on the core idea of Terran vs. Protoss, where things are going to. In Terran vs. Protoss, we know that it is the mobile Protoss army who's taking lots of expansions and trying to sweep for mines and get set up, versus the immobile Tank Vulture army, where the Terran player has much stronger units but can't expand as much. So it's that battle of a mobile army with lots of expanding versus an immobile army without a lot of expanding. We talked about the openings being ways for Protoss and Terran to deal with things respectively in terms of threats, and we'll look at all of that as we're heading through and try to tie these concepts together. And we'll also be asking ourselves questions about how we think these transitions are. Silent Ice, have we done videos from the Protoss perspective yet? All of the Terran vs. Protoss videos were from the perspective of both Terran and Protoss. You might not think so, though, because we've been listening to Terran music. Oh. So, the Protoss player in this game is Free. Free is one of these 6 dragons of Brood War. As in, he is one of these 6 Protoss players that was considered the absolute best. That list is Stork, Jongbi, Bisu, Best, Kal, and Free. He is against Lash, who is considered a Terran who is essentially as good as Flash. He doesn't quite win as many games as Flash, but Flash and Lash are always mentioned in the same breath as of now. So, first things first, we want to make sure that we know where the mid-game's going to, because all strategies in StarCraft converge at mid-game. Protoss is going to be trying to get a whole bunch of bases, lots of Dragoons and Zealots with speed, and ideally teching towards Arbiters. Terran will be on 2 base, ideally going to 3 base. We'll be getting upgrades, and we'll be going from 2 factory up to somewhere between 6 and 9. So, what do we think about these openings? I'm going to be saying this throughout this entire game. What do we think about this opening? Going for a Marine and then a factory right away. Everything looks normal, but 1 SCV is left in the gas. This is because Lash is going to be going for, as quickly as humanly possible, an expansion command center. This is the most typical looking opening for Terrans these days. And sometimes these Marines do little cute moves, like move forward to pick off probes. These are minor optimizations. What do we think of Free's opening? Well, this Cybernetics Core is researching the range upgrade there. And it's 1 gate range with an expansion coming up. This is a very, very passive-looking opening, and I'm happy to begin with this sort of game because this will highlight how a normal-ass, passive-ass game works. Always remember, in StarCraft, the fundamental is getting more resources. That is the fundamental going on in all matchups. It's resources, resources, resources. And therefore, defensive play, where you can stay alive versus all the stuff, is a fundamental that needs to live in pretty much any strategy that you're doing, because eventually, large numbers are what's going to determine who wins the game. And so, this game is boring as hell. I am not going to mince words. This game is boring. And I'm so glad we're starting with a boring one, so that way you can really see kind of how all this stuff that we've been talking about for the last 3 to 4 weeks of shows You're going to see all this in action. What's this? I'm going to go ahead and open up this unit panel so we can see this is a robotics facility. We see these gates. Now, what's going on in the Protoss opening? Well, we knew that vultures, tanks, and mines are big threats early on for Protoss. Dragoons are very good against all of those in small numbers, and we need the observers to be able to see the mines. Everything makes sense, especially after getting an expansion like this. We want to make sure that we can protect it. What do we see out of Last? Well, Last, he gets siege tanks with siege mode. Look at that. Woohoo! Notice all this gorgeous positioning, tanks on the high ground. This barracks, where is it floating to? Well, it's going to land right up here. The engineering base floating up, it's going to land right up here. What else do we see in this main base? Well, we see some supply depots, certainly. We see this engineering base, certainly. What's this here for? To protect against Dark Templars. It's also a potential tool in case we wind up seeing Reavers of sorts. And now we're getting Vultures. So what do we think about this? Well, here is where I'm going to stop. I'm actually going to stop at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Alright, come on, get to here, because this is a very nice stopping point. It's almost as though when you take notes, it works. Taking a look at the Protoss base, ooh, he's looking really nice. He has Dragoons up, he has Observers up, he's getting all his probes and gas mining. This is all normal, normal, normal. Terran has his defenses up. He has the 2 factory. This is the nice core. Why an academy? Well, it allows us to scan versus Dark Templar. But more importantly than anything, we get scanned to be able to just go look into his damn base. Excellent. I want you to just cement this in your mind as a beautiful midpoint for all of these players when they're trying to hit to mid-game. Mid-game being a little bit deeper in, closer to 10 minutes in this particular matchup, but this is just a very nice looking moment. Why Vultures with speed as a next choice here instead of mines? We're already pretty defended. We want to see what's going on. Easy. Super easy. And thus begins a ridiculously boring game. What's the big threat looming over each player at the highest level? Well, for Protoss, it's these unbelievably efficient and powerful Terran units come in too large of numbers and free loses. Protoss just dies. What's Terran's big worry? That Protoss gets so many bases, like this one up here, like this one that's hidden beneath the fog here, like this one that's hidden beneath the fog here. It winds up being 8 base versus the Terran's 3, and then it doesn't even matter if Terran has a huge army because Protoss will always overwhelm. These are the big threats. Protoss mass expanding and getting too much money. Terran getting too many units in too large in numbers and doing too powerful a swing. Free is always known as being an extremely efficient and very thoughtful Protoss. He is not like Best, who masses up expansions, does not get a lot of gas geysers, favors extra gateways and larger armies over finesse. Free is a very, very careful, thoughtful Protoss. You'll see that he's building only Dragoons. He's getting very early Arbiters. He's getting not lots of gateways, but just some gateways kind of early. Lots would be more like 10. He's getting 6. This third is coming a little later than most other Protosses. Many other Protosses just go 3 gates with the 1 robotics facility and then instantly take this third base. Not Free. And what do we think about this for Last? This is actually pretty damn normal. Last is pretty turtled up. Look at this beautiful wall off using these buildings. He has lots of tanks being built out of the 2 factories. He's now walling off with supply depots. Get ready to be bored out of your damn minds, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, this is the Flash style. Flash style is you get an early armory, and you just build up on 3 bases and you eventually kill them with a huge death push. Now, what's Free doing in this mid-game? Here's one of the important concepts that we've talked about in the Battling Terran vs. Protoss video, the Terran vs. Protoss micro video. These Dragoons are spreading out to deny vultures. They're moving forward trying to pick off mines. And by the same token, Last is trying to move around, spot all these things. Free, although he delayed his third expansion, he's now going to be expanding at a pretty regular clip. What did this vulture do? It killed off the probe that was heading to the expansion. Great, 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 great. Also, in the Terran vs. Protoss battling video, how does Protoss deal with an extremely large Terran army? Well, it's got to be with Arbiters and Stasis, because you simply cannot win with a maxed Zealot Dragoon army versus a maxed Tank Vulture army. Alright, what is this? This is the factory explosion, man. Which typically is answered by a gateway explosion from Free. Free tends to be a little bit lower on overall gateway counts. Alright, what's happening with Free? Free is spreading himself out with Dragoons all over the map, just making sure that there's no hidden expansions. He's spreading out with Observers all over the map, making sure that there's no pushes coming. Snooze fest. Snoozy snooze fest. That said, this is what I would call pretty damn typical of mid to low level games. This is highly unusual in super pro games, but in mid to low level games, the Protoss just sitting and getting to freely build up is very, very common. And the Terran perhaps being a little too passive, very, very common. What are other defensive things that we're seeing out of Last? He's building turrets, ringing his base to fight against Arbiters. We have a lot of turrets here, a lot of mines in case of a recall. This is actually pretty common style of play on Fighting Spirit because your 3 bases just have so much damn money. What do we see also in the main base for Last? Upgrades, upgrades, upgrades. Upgrades for Terran are super, super, super important. So what's happening with Free here? Free is getting to expand as much as he wants. He is completely unpressured. For a moment there, we might have said to ourselves, well, Free's kind of delayed this third, so maybe he won't have enough if there was a push from Last that came at around 120 supply. There were only 6 gateways producing. But at this point, who do you think has an advantage? Who do you think has an advantage? Think about this. What are those fundamentals that are going on in the matchup? It's Terran being able to build up a super death army that we can't beat and being too efficient over time. And the Protoss one is getting too many bases and getting too powered up. It's pretty close, but I would give the advantage to Free. I would give the advantage to Protoss in this particular circumstance. So here's the big death push. So let's just take a look at how all the micro winds up happening. We see these Zealots and Observers have been sweeping. Notice how diligent Free is at pulling all of his forces back to be participating in this large final fight. Very easy to have some straggling units. Free essentially never has straggling units. If you look at any of these bases, every unit either has a purpose, or is at a rally point, or is right here ready to fight. Free is doing a very, very nice job. Big push getting set up. Free does something here that I think is just fantastic. While all this is going on, he throws down 4 Stargates and a fleet beacon to build lots of carriers. Why? Because he already has a lot of bases, and he wants to make sure that he has an army that can fight more directly with the Terran army. This carrier, Dragoon, Zealot, High Templar force. Sort of the ultimate Protoss death army. If you look at Free's vision, he literally has Observers ringing absolutely everything. There is nothing that Free doesn't know. Moving in, get ready for the most uninspired stasis of all time. Oh! Oh! Yeah, pretty awesome. Freeze very carefully. Trying to avoid the EMPs. Gets hit. Pulls back. Remember, Protoss is the one who chooses when the engagement happened. Terran can't really make that choice. Terran expanding here, love this. Love, love, love this. Where are the rest of those Terran units? He doesn't have any here. He's macroing out of 8 factories in his main base. This is a very tense fight situation. What's very nice that we're seeing out last, he's hugging this wall, which means that he can't get flanked from this angle, so it's a smaller concave for Protoss. Pretty good stasises. In the shuttle, we see some zealots getting dropped. And what we would typically expect in this fight is for Terran to come out on top. That's exactly what Terran does. This is the sort of death push that's very, very scary if you are Protoss, because you really can't fight this head-on. So what are we going to see out of Protoss? Well, this is where these 4 Stargates of carriers come in. I think he actually has... Does he have these carriers out? Is this at a different time in the game? I guess it's slightly later. But with 5 gateways over here producing, 8 gateways in this main base producing. You see Free also has 2k in the bank. And Free is just waiting. He's just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. He's being annoying at these other expansions. He knows that there's no other expansions on the map anywhere. He's just waiting because eventually he's going to have carriers. Snooze fest. Snooze fest. Going to speed it up. Small Zealot counterattack is a little bit annoying. Terran force is still very large. And there's lots more things that can be brought up to the front. This was a nice little move, moving the tanks forward to be able to begin poking while the big bulk of the tanks is sitting here very, very sturdily and safely. And quite honestly, if I had to say what do I think is going wrong for Terran here, I think he's simply not quite being aggressive enough and pushing in enough. Because now, this is the position that's most threatening for Protoss. There's this wall of mines, tanks in good position, tanks here. But now carriers are out. In a very simple game to start things off. Oh my gosh, there's carriers here. Everything has to pull back. This expansion never managed to land. Lash sort of panics and is like, ah, quickly, go somewhere. Go somewhere with forces, and Free's like, no problem, I'll just pull back there and defend. And we have ourselves a very straightforward game. A very non-crazy, calm-looking game from Free, where he did not do a single counterattack, he did not do a single drop, he did not do a single recall. He literally just carefully waited, expanded a bunch, waited, built an army, delayed, and then boom, just eventually had too many resources, too much stuff. And I think that this is a beautiful example of a really simple fundamentals strategy game where Last just didn't quite pressure quickly enough. He didn't quite attack and shut down any expansion or prevent Free from doing any of that stuff quickly enough. And the thing that's kind of funny is that Free is famous for this style where it seems like he's expanding less, and he is, but he's really efficient, and he gets Arbiters a little earlier than everyone else. And it can be really hard to deal with. Where is the second game? Is it 2348? Perfect. 2348. What? It says 2348, and there's no 2348. There's no 2348. Is it 2248? Did I mistype? I hope I mistyped. Yes. Yes, this is it. Here we go. So this map is Circuit Breaker. Where's the diplomacy menu on this new thing? Yeah. Real entire map. So Circuit Breaker is a map that has this natural expansion and this mineral-only expansion, and then a pretty easy-to-defend 4th base for Terran. The center of the map is super wide open. It's just a big, empty area. But if you're Terran, you got to be a little careful that you don't do something like... Where's this diplomacy menu again? There it is. You got to be careful that you don't If you're Protoss, you have to make sure that you're attacking at good and reasonable angles, and if you are... actually, that's true for both. Both players have to be very careful with their angling. By the way, you see this sort of stuff in the middle of the mini-map? This is what a lot of map makers do, where they try to, like, make cool vision words. Pretty neat, right? Except I can't read this. It's like something something times. Who knows? Okay. This matchup, this particular game is going to go very similarly. It's once again between Free and Last. We're going to see one gate, Dragoon, except out of Last, we're seeing a slightly different opening. He's going for a barracks, followed immediately by a command center on the low ground. And what do we think of this opening? Well, this cannot have Zealots pass through it, but Marines can pass through it. So this is what defends against early Zealot pressure. The bunker being done is what defends against Dragoon pressure. And now, Last backs up and gets 2 factories on the backside of this. Meanwhile, we see Free doing essentially the exact same opening. But Free is going to get a little bit in trouble by being so passive this game. What's the big threat? That Terran gets too big of a death army and kills us? Or Timing pushes Protoss and Protoss loses? With this early expansion, it's very possible to just abruptly have too big of a Terran army too early if you're Protoss. Pretty much for the rest of the game. What do we think about going for tank straight into spider mines? Straight into vultures, instead of getting siege mode? Free, again, very well known for doing this sort of shit, where he's just ultra efficient with his Dragoons. That was a little bit sloppy, but either way, if you are Terran, and you just get a handful of vultures early on, you throw down mines. It's just a good way to keep a spot on what Protoss is doing. And what is Protoss doing? Well, he's building some Dragoons. And he's also getting Templar Archives. And you can't see it, but this is a Stargate. It's hidden underneath our menu. Free is once again going for very, very fast Arbiters. In terms of opening, again, very fast Armory, very fast 2 factory. This is looking pretty common. This is looking pretty typical. Command Center coming up. It's going to be another relatively passive game, so I'm going to speed it up because I know you want action. I know that some of you are here to learn, but all of you are here for the juicy, juicy fights. Ah, yes. Protoss Nexus en route. Beautiful positioning by Terran, placing just a handful of mines. We see that there are missile turrets sort of ringing around to make sure that observers and shuttles get pushed back, more factories en route. This third base from Free, this feels a little dangerous to me, because look at this tiny alleyway. Look at this. Doesn't it just look nice to just siege, I don't know, 2 tanks here, 40 tanks here, and you're still defending your third base? Doesn't that look nice? There's some very small little harassment going on here from Last. This is not a deliberate timing or anything like that. This is Last taking some vultures here to check, taking vultures here to check, taking vultures here to check, and then saying, you know, let me see if I can maybe walk in here, and then going, oh, there is some action. Ah, I can get in here. More turrets to ring to make sure that nothing can get in. Scans going off like crazy for our good friend, Mr. Last. Free is continuing to do the sweep, and I hope that you're appreciating some of the similarities that we're seeing out of the last game in terms of what the Dragoons are doing. The fact that, yet again, 8 gateways out for Free. Yet again, relatively early Arbiters. Yet again, lots of bases and macroing happening from the Terran side of things. Here's an attempt to do a recall. Manages to sneak its way in. This can be really annoying. This is a nice technique that Protoss players sometimes do, where they bring a shuttle with Zealots inside. And even though this gets kind of murdered in the main base, the idea behind it is still quite sound. Just keep throwing units in, make all the Terran units sit in the back of the base, Yeah, maybe we lost a lot of our units, but look at how many SCVs there are. I mean, there's 7... There's only 12 SCVs that are remaining from this. Siege tanks already did a number on them. But this is part of the advantage of being Terran on Circuit Breaker. You can get your expansions up so fast. That, look at the supply, 181 to 164. Typically, this is the opposite. Typically, Protoss has more and Terran has less. But Terran with 7 factories, with the ability to get yet another base here. It's very difficult for Terran to deny economy from... Or very difficult for Protoss to deny economy from Terran. Now, if we look here, we have mines getting placed here, mines getting placed here, and as we know, if you're placing mines down, you probably don't want to push in that direction. That's exactly what Lash is doing. He built a supply depot here initially to block any sort of invasion. But now, this push is positioned beautifully. It's a response to this Protoss having lost so many units in that recall. And, I mean, almost no matter what, this position sucks for Protoss. Protoss needs to just get these probes the hell out of here. We're going to see how badly this goes for Terran. Excuse me. We're going to see how badly this goes for Protoss in a moment. And this is a lot to do with the battle-focused video that I talked about. In this game and the last one, both players got to build up approximately what they wanted to. We saw Arbiters, lots of Dragoons, and Zealots following up for free. We see huge amounts of upgrades. These tanks are 1-0, and the upgrades for the tanks are almost at 2-0. One of the armories was lost in the recall, so here's the second armory that was rebuilt. Both players got to do what they wanted to do, but now the positioning of this fight is so much better. Yeah, Zealots get recalled, but look how quickly they died. Just a little bit of tank spreading and the Vultures in the right spot. Suddenly it's like just Dragoons moving through a choke. And I think I would say that overall, everything looks better for Lash at this point in the game compared to the last game. In this game, Protoss has a 3rd base and a 4th base, and has only just now started a 5th base. And if we look in the main, there's these 8 that were here in mid-game, 9, 10. In the last game, Free had 5 functioning bases, with an additional 5 gateways at another main base, and was en route to carriers. This push is happening not necessarily at a literal time earlier than in the last fight, but it's happening at a relatively much earlier time. Protoss is lower in tech, lower in bases, lower in pretty much every regard. And this is the exact same threat that we've been talking about before, that Terran just needs to get to a big enough army, jam in through a very good angle with a big death push, and Protoss will slowly wither away from here. Where does Lash push to next? If you have a slow army, often it's just wherever's closest, man. Often that's it. Often it's just wherever's closest. Now, these games were very tame. These 2 games are exceptionally orthodox, with relatively little insane tactics going on. I mean, Terran is just death marching up here. Yeah, there's a lot of mines here, but he's trying to place a missile turret here to, you know, deflect any issues, but I still would kill off these mines if I were Terran. But I mean, a lot of this is just pretty rote. What did Free do wrong? He didn't expand enough, and he didn't counter pressure enough. He just let Lash come to him, and then Free was forced to engage right here if he wanted to protect this expansion. And that was that. These 2 relatively benign games should be anchors in your mind for the future games we're about to look at, where everything goes completely insane. We're going to look at 2 different players now, Two players that are notorious for odd games. Iris versus Bisu. What is the replay number, Sean? It's replay number 88. Beautiful. This is the one on Outsider. This is the one on Heartbreak Ridge. Excellent. Now, Iris is known for being one of the most aggressive players in the history of StarCraft 1. His nickname was the Berserker because he would always find an excuse to attack. And watching his games are really funny a lot of times because he goes, attack, 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 attack. I lost. That's basically the story of it. So when we hop into this game, we have Iris here playing under the ID 30 years old. We have Bisu over here playing under the ID Only Star. Only Star and NA First are the most common IDs that you'll see in Bisu replays. So let's take a look at what Iris does in this game. And there's a very important concept that we're going to be looking at, which is how does this opening get back to the normal mid-game? Get in your head what the normal mid-game is for Protoss. Wait, there's a lot of gateways, there's observers, getting zealots with leg speed, second and definitely trying to get a third, cool. And if I'm Terran, I have 2 bases, I have 2 factories, trying to get more factories and more bases, okay, and I have some tanks in defensive positions, maybe some vultures running around. This is the normal look if you are the mid-games for each of these. So what are we going to see here out of each of these players? Well, first of all, Bisu does a very cute play that's common on 2-player maps. Not like happens over 50% of the time common, but will happen a good chunk of time. Like, I'd say maybe 1 out of every 10 games. You'll encounter a Protoss who does this. They send a very early probe over to take a gas geyser. Whatever you do, don't think about moves like this locally. Don't think, all right, cool, so he won't get a factory up. He's going to get a factory up eventually. You need to think quite a bit far into the next step. The mid-game's a good way to do that. It's very difficult for early attacks to happen now. It's very difficult for early factory pressure to happen now. But the factory's bound to come. Now, if in the year 2017, you know what most Terrans do if this happens? They just expand down here. And then they build Marines to try to kill off this this assimilator. A lot of modern Terrans are just like, oh, cool, whatever, I guess I'll just expand. It's not a big deal. But, you know, Iris, he's going to build a second barracks here. Look back in Bisu's base. What's happening? Well, he's getting the normal expected stuff, right? He's starting to converge back to a typical mid-game. A few of these SCVs are brought off to kill off this assimilator. Marines getting produced, supply depots getting produced, Marines getting built, SCVs going into scout. Okay, so this is a slightly weird game. I haven't talked too much about the map. This is Heartbreak Ridge, which is a map that I really hate playing on as Zerg. And I'm not going to do too deep of a map analysis. Quite honestly, the only thing you really need to know about is the fact that there's this entrance outside of the natural expansion, and there's a third base up here, accessible by moving out, up this ramp, and then down along this terrain. There's also, if I remove the minimap, where's the minimap removal thing? How do you remove the minimap? Oh, there it is. There's this backdoor entrance where you can get a ramp up here and remove this, and then go down here. By the way, I don't like how the UI actually obstructs so much of the visible game space. But anyways, there's not going to be too much terrain-relevant stuff. What's going to happen is that Iris is going to go for an academy in a moment. Here it comes. Boop. So what's good and bad about this? Well, first of all, he's obviously going for Medic Marine. Obviously. But think about the mid-game. Think about the next steps. What's going to be good and bad about this position? So first of all, Bisu, who's getting Singularity Charge, aka Dragoon Range. Looks like the Dragoon Range is almost done. Dragoons with range are going to be helpful. We see a shield battery built defensively, but notice that Bisu is not going to abandon what he's doing and change it dramatically. He's still going for 2 gates, still building mostly Dragoons. And on Iris's side of things, Iris is getting stim. He will be able to get a scanner sweep, so he's a little more protected from Dark Templar that you might imagine. Alright, cool. Dragoon range is done. We learn that Marines are just not very good against Dragoons with range. In fact, Marines are not that good against much of anything. Iris was relying on the element of surprise. There's stim that goes down, but Bisu just continues to kite. More medics coming down. Medics are really high-value units against Dragoons, because they can out-heal the Dragoon damage. So for all these funky-ass exchanges of micro, what's been happening back in Bisu's base? Well, he's gotten a robotics facility. He's still building Dragoons. He's going to be getting a robotics support bay in a moment to be able to load this up, to make sure that he is super safe against these Marines. And this is basically where Iris realizes, dude, you know what? There's no way this is actually going to work. He's going tanks with siege mode. The Dragoons literally just microed the Marines to death. This is part of why most players don't like to do this. Iris, again, looking for any excuse to attack. Tries to find his way in. Now, why would Iris build a starport? Because it's super common if a player opens up with Marines for the Protoss to respond with Reavers and a shuttle. So Iris is going to get a Wraith to pick off that shuttle. Missile turrets going down, because we still need defense against Reavers in the main base. And now, if you're Iris, you're gonna start to go, dude, you know what? I really got to get an expansion up here. Like, I'm not gonna die to this shuttle, but Iris, with his barracks that he was using to scout, he lands and tries to build fire bats to stim and pick off, which is actually a pretty high value play, which is pretty cool. Beast is getting the expansion up. All right, cool. Now, this is where at 8:30 we're going to stop because we like even times. At this point in the game, I want you to notice that even though Terran opened with this weird medic marine thing, that Terran has wiggled his way back to working towards mech, trying to get an expansion up, engineering bay and academy in order to have some defensive and anti-air stuff. If we look at the Protoss side of things, he has a small number of gateways, he has a second base, maybe has some Reavers, but more importantly has some observers. And this is looking a little bit more like a normal mid-game, with Protoss slightly ahead of Terran in terms of the times of things. Never one to be content to stay passive. Iris looked for an opportunity to drop. Bisu has a spotting pylon. This is a super cool thing that Bisu does a lot. Whenever he has map control, especially against a person who's on one base, he'll just build these spotter pylons just to see what's going on. I mean, yeah, there's Dragoons sweeping the map. There's these observers with the Reaver and the shuttle also sweeping the bottom side. There's Dragoons on the front and observers out here. Yeah, sure. But he can't be in all those places at once. So may as well just try to delay him a little bit here. Now you saw Free. Free often leaves all of his Dragoons together in very majestic clumps. Bisu does a lot of weird split up stuff with his Dragoons. Once again, factories getting produced for Iris. Iris is a player who, rather than going 2 factory and defending with tanks, tends to go 1 factory with an add-on, and then 2 additional factories making vultures so that once again he can be aggressive. On the Bisu side of things, he's getting a Citadel of a Dune for range. He's continuing to make out of a relatively small number of gateways. Or as I would call it, a modest gateway count. Look at this! Look at this! It's pretty nice and normal. Excellent! Bisu's Dragoons are full of regrets. Why did you do this to me? In the same way that Bisu tends to sweep around with Dragoons to pick off mines, picks off that barracks. And this moment is really a clinic in Bisu's just like calm, sturdy defense. Listen, if you have battered your opponent down, Bisu has denied this marine pressure, He's delayed this expansion. Bisu's getting to take 3 bases just the way that he wants. How does Bisu lose this game? If there's a drop that kills off all his stuff. He's leaving Dragoons in the main base. Why would you leave Dragoons in the main base? Well, not only is it affordable because of how behind Terran is, but dude, we saw a Wraith. We saw it. We saw the Wraith. We know that dropships are possible. Iris is notorious for being able to find and worm his way in and be smart with his aggression. One simple thing that Iris did just here that's really smart, these vultures, none of them have mines. He efficiently used all the mines elsewhere on the map to make sure that... No, he doesn't even have it. Holy cow. Okay, sometimes he does this in his other games. I've watched a bunch of Iris games. I'm sorry I was wrong. You know why he doesn't have mines? Because he hasn't researched them. Alright, ignore that note. But okay, the second smart thing that Iris does is he's only bringing 3 vultures in here. He's not loading it to the brim. He's trying to do some damage, but he doesn't need to do a lot of damage. The smaller the investment you have in harassment, the less damage you need to do. And also, you shouldn't bring fully 3 mined vultures every single drop. Damn. Part of the reason why having these Dragoons out on the map is nice is that you get the opportunity to do stuff like that. You can pick off retreats. Look at him planting mines. Look at that. It's so amazing. Isn't that cool that he can plant mines like that? This is what makes Iris a good player, is he just keeps finding ways to worm his way back there. More vultures move out onto the center of the map. So, whereas most Terran players would be very defensive, with 2 factories making tanks, Iris just wants excuses to be able to get out there with vultures. He's building enough tanks. He's going to get another factory with an add-on later, but for now, he's trying to look for vulnerabilities, because he's behind. Look at the supply. 130 to 90. And in StarCraft 2, supplies tend to be pretty even. In Brood War, supplies tend to be pretty uneven. Like, this is not horrific for Terran. This is actually a little bit Protoss favored, but not a lot. If it was like 105 to supply to 131, I'd be like, yes, this is a very even game. So Protoss, yet again, is doing the same thing that we have seen all good Protosses do, which is to try to slowly expand more and more and more to try to trace when there's a big explosion of factories coming, so that way the Protoss can respond with a big explosion of gateways. Bisu is just sticking with 6. He's getting Arbiter Tech. This is, again, more just great aggressive stuff. We saw this in some of the early episodes of Terran vs. Protoss strategy, where you can walk with your ultra-fast vultures and plant mines, and then you float 2 tanks in with a dropship. So that way you can maintain aggression. Except these tanks are idiots and they're shooting the pylon instead of the Dragoons. Good job, tanks. There we go. Now they're aiming. Pretty cool aggression, huh? You lift up with the tank and run away. The vultures run this way. The danger with this type of harassment, if you are Iris, is that you just start hemorrhaging supply by losing vultures. And that's really the story of this mid-game, is Bisu started ahead by having such good defense, and continues to gobble up vultures here and there, continues to deny success out of those dropships. And Bisu has basically just been slowly adding on gateways. Now that he has this up, he can go to like 10 to 12. We see stasis being researched in the supply field. In the supply field, what the hell am I talking about? In the production tab. And now Iris is taking this 3rd base. I want you just to notice, in terms of a literal timing sense, Last was pushing with a nearly maxed army around this time in the first 2 games we witnessed. Here, Iris is just now establishing a 3rd. He doesn't have any upgrades done. He's almost done with his first upgrade, the 1-0 upgrade. And he only has 5 factories. This is what happens when there are aggressive openings. Everyone gets kind of delayed with what they're doing. Same thing with Bisu. Bisu's taking his third, and it's a little later. This is why I don't want you to rely as much on this timer right here, because things have a much higher flexibility in Brood War than compared to StarCraft 2. Now, if you're getting maxed as Protoss, you can begin to ask yourself questions like, hey, can I just go fucking kill him? And the answer a lot of times is, yes, you can! So despite the fact that mines have been placed, tanks are spread out very nicely, there's a science vessel here able to see everything, the vultures are in a nice position behind these tanks, except now they're not, now they're able to be gobbled up. Bisu just marches right in here and just kills everything. Relatively simple, nice-looking game. Hell yeah. Bisu didn't heavily overreact to the bio opening. We have a very, very nice game coming out of Bisu, where he just kind of, piece by piece, picks Iris apart. Now the next few games I want to look at are very, very short ones that are very opening-focused, and they will end in the opening. Let's see, where is it? Up one, up one. These games are almost hilarious to me because of how fast they are. Where is it? Gunchi. No, not Gunchi. It's Perfect Man. Yeah. This is where you really get to see the difference of an incredibly strong Terran with good openings and just a Protoss who's pretty good. Perfect Man is a Protoss player who's super good. No reason to shit on him too much. His name is Bears in this game. Gosu up here, this is Last again. We're going to see lots of games from Last and Bisu because they're excellent. But Perfect Man was one of these B-level Protosses who would occasionally make runs to the round of 32 in leagues, occasionally would be brought out in Pro League to play a match for his team on a very specifically prepared map. What we're going to see here is a game that ends in the opening. Now, if you're new to StarCraft Remastered, or even if you're not, hell, if you just play this game, you're going to lose games that are fast all the time. We're actually going to watch a few of them in a row. They happen constantly in this game, and it's important to see where and why they happen, because it's easy to put a little too much stock in success in the opening, to see what happens at the start of the game and go, aha, I need to just attack a little harder now and win. Both of these players will have next steps in their game. So this is a very fast Citadel of a Dune, and Perfect Man, the Protoss in the bottom right, is going to be rushing for Dark Templar. So what do we think about this opening? Well, he built a Zealot instead of building a Dragoon, so that way he could spend his gas getting this early on. The Zealot blocks the ramp to ensure that the SCV does not sneak up. And you know what we see out of Last? We see that similar style of opening where he goes for one factory, he's going to build an expansion, boom, super, super, super early. Now, what do we think about this opening? Well, we've already seen it twice out of Last. It seems pretty good in long games. How will it fare against a super fast Dark Templar? It's very easy to lose this if you don't have proper preparation. And we'll now see why many players, instead of favoring getting siege mode with the tanks, do like to get mines. So, alright, Dark Templar being built. Nexus being built as well. And the thought process behind this Protoss opening is, I might just win the game immediately with Dark Templar. But more importantly, I can't lose the game immediately with Dark Templar, because he needs scan. He needs some way to continually see the DTs. So if I have a DT here and he scans here, and then I have a DT here and he scans here, he's going to be out of scans by the time he works his way up to here. Haha, I am safe. So let's watch what Last does. It's very easy to go into super defensive mode if you are Terran here. This is a really nice adjustment that's going to be made out of last. I'm actually going to back it up just a smidge. So we were at 430. I'm going to come back to 412. The art of detecting what the hell's going on is most often understood by what is not going on. There's one Dragoon here, and there are not more Dragoons. I am not seeing Dragoon range. I see a Zealot at the front. I am not really seeing anything else. And there's an expansion here. This looks a little bit like Reavers or Dark Templar, but it really does not look like normal play. It does not look like he's going for some sort of gateway-based all-in, because this is still a pretty early Nexus. So what most players will tend to do in these opening stages is they'll go, oh, dude, how do I defend? Let me put mines here against the DTs, put turrets here against the Reaver. Instead, Lash just attacks and rallies vultures off one factory. So this is very suspect, the fact that there is still a Zealot blocking and there's no other Dragoons. So Lash just goes, man. So here's the Dark Templar getting constructed. Or excuse me, already out, and there's another Dark Templar getting constructed here. This is the common expansion defense. I'm going to watch this a little slowly. Zealot and 2 Dragoons, pretty intimidating to deal with. Okay. But you know what Lash does? He just walks back. He doesn't commit. He's just like, alright, sure, yeah, no problem. Academy's not even done yet. Well, let's just put one mine here and one mine here. Why do you think he plants this mine first and then retreats and plants this second mine? This spider mine will pop up and run this way if there's a DT. So if we plant the front mine first and then back plant mines, it ensures that this will stay alive more often. Just good common rule, plant the front mine first and then back up and plant mines. Look at that artistically good placement of the barracks. Still only vulture upgrades getting produced. This is a little annoying. Again, this is where most people just lose. Notice this attack from Last early on that moved halfway across the map and then pulled back. If our opponent was going for Reaver, he would have to use that Reaver to defend and stay alive when we get to see it. And it's gone. Second DT. Kind of obnoxious. Alright, well. Cool. Dealt with that threat, no problem. The issue with going for these early harassment things instead of Dragoons, we've talked so much about how Dragoons are sort of the lifeblood of staying alive as Protoss in the early game, is that if you just mess like one thing up like this, this can be game-endingly bad. Notice if Terran can't get in, he retreats and loses one vulture. But instead, Terran does get in. Eats like every single mine shot. This is again part of the reason why a lot of top Terran players prefer mines over siege mode. They just feel more stable, they can deal more damage, they can punish more. In one fell swoop, Protoss just kind of fell apart. You know what Terran's doing? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, recognize this? This is what Iris likes to do. One factory combined with a single machine shop, followed up with 2 factories. Now this is still going to be able to flow into a normal mid-game. Terran can still just build a command center, build an armory for upgrades, take this third, build a bunch more factories. Terran is still fully capable of doing that. Oof. Just going to do a little juicy mine aggression first. And I'm not even sure, is siege mode done yet? No. You just don't really need early siege mode. If you want to play super safe, yeah, you can. But good old Perfect Man, aka Bears, was trying, I think, to be a little too cute for his own good. Like, he's going for a Reaver follow-up after Dark Templar, which I just don't think is very strong. tanks march in, and GG. So if we look at the entire map in this moment, what is this? What the hell? Wait, okay, I guess I'll back up 2 seconds and then reveal the entire map. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Okay, if we back up and look, we can understand what's going wrong with Perfect Man's build by asking what's the normal mid-game for Protoss. Well, it's having a lot of gateways with Dragoons, getting to Zealot leg speed, taking a 3rd base, and in particular, having gateways to match the increase in factories out of Terran. It's really the reason why Perfect Man didn't have a good defense here. In theory, you can get a Reaver in order to defend this. In theory, you can get a Reaver to help you hold this off. But that's always a temporary solution. That's not the way the matchup flows. That's not the sort of fundamental that's underlying it. And in case you were worried that you wouldn't get to see Perfect Man lose another game, I got one for you right here. This is going to be great. Let's go to this TvP. Yeah, where is it? Perfect Man. There's the second game. Ah, what a beauty. So in this game, yet again, we're going to see a similar style of thing, where it's going to be very much so focused on the opening. And I think it's very easy to play this matchup from a Terran perspective and to feel like there's a lot of threats that can come at you. And if you play defensively mindedly, you can just lose. Oodles and oodles and oodles of games. But if you just do a little bit of Vulture aggression versus early Protoss shenanigans, you can just like end the game, man. It's great. It's great. Also, what up, Sham 2? Good to see you here. So what's going to be coming out of Perfect Man? Last is continuing to look around. Okay. What do you think this cheesy nonsense is? Why would you get Protoss air weapons? Because it looks like you're getting Dragoon range. Terran has seen 3 pylons. So maybe Perfect Man can then cancel the Protoss air weapons, get the Citadel of Adun. Boom, there it is, it's canceled. And maybe our Terran hero Last will be fooled again. I think I'm so clever. Dude, all Protoss players do cheesy nonsense like this. Oh, there he is. He's researching air weapons again, just in case. And there it is. Aha, this DT rush will surely work this time. Marines and tank and mines getting produced. If you're ever Terran and you're not sure what's going on, you can just slightly delay the command center. If you see Dragoons with range proudly, valiantly marching up and trying to mess with you, you should be like, alright, this is a normal Protoss. But if he's doing anything that's like techie focused like this, Protoss literally will not have the Dragoons. He will not have the dudes. So I find this game to be hilarious. This is an even more pure opening. Do-do-do-do-do. You know what this is? You know what this is? This is the FD opening. It's just happening quite a bit sooner. Because Last is like, oh, dude. You don't have anything. Okay, so we have our Dark Templar's not done yet. Whoops. Our Dark Templar rush didn't quite rush well enough. And here's the Spider Mine. Careful! Okay, good. He backed up in time. Alright, well, nice. Do-do-do-do-do. Hey, this guy only seems to have had 1 Spider-Man. Where'd the other 2 go? Oh, look at that. 1, 2, potato. Yeah, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't this beautiful? Engineering bay coming down. Why? Detection and anti-reaver stuff. We don't really know what's up yet. Oh, you hear now, what most Terrans tend to do is retreat. You don't have to retreat in this position. Look at this. La 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 la, do 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 do. I'm gonna plant mines in your base, do do do. Oh, are we researching siege mode? Nope, vultures. Too overpowered. Vultures are so strong early game against all these sorts of rushes. Nice. Oh, quickly make dragoons. Oh, God. Nice. Excellent. Oh, yeah. Now, in this moment, it's very easy to be like, alright, that was cool. The counter is to get vultures with mines. On one hand, sure, but ignore the Dark Templars for a moment. We have an expansion with a turret against Dark Templar with mines, and this turret will also protect future tanks sieged against a shuttle. We have 2 factories coming up. We have 2 bases. We're starting to get an academy. Soon enough, we can get an armory. And this is now flowing into a normal-looking Terran mid-game. Never forget that you want to solve problems, such as, how do I kill Dark Templar? I build vultures with mines. You want to solve those problems without changing what your next steps are. You want to make sure that you are still flowing back into something positive for you. God, that was so many. Now, if you've watched any of Flash's videos on YouTube, some of his educational videos, he believes that if you see Dark Templar and you hold it off very effectively, just immediately make an armory, get upgrades, get a 3rd command center. You're not under any threat, and you can end the game that way. Just with a big death push, and there's no problem. Last just builds a bunch of factories, 5, and we'll be able to do a big attack. You're noticing still no tanks are even getting produced here. It's just mass vultures. It's awesome. Works just fine. But if at some point Last is unable to end with vultures, what can you do? Get an add-on, get a command center, keep making SCVs, get an armory, right? You want to have those next steps going. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Bears. See you later, Bears. All right. Let's watch another game from the, the next game is a more crazy game. Notice that we're sort of progressively descending into chaos. This is another game between Bisu and Iris. It should be number 88. Beautiful. It's on the map Outsider, which I know all of you have downvoted as a ladder map. Outsider is a map where we do need to spend a little bit of time looking at the entire thing. You have a main base that's huge. It has so much open space. Ah! Very easy for someone to do something like drop units over here and then walk over to your mineral patch. In particular, there is even these back ramps which lead to mineral fields, but this forms a wall. So units can't pass through this until this gets walled off. But again, you could drop units up here and then wander them up into the main base. At your front entrance is an expansion. It's a pretty normal expansion. It has 7 mineral patches instead of the 8 or 9. It's more common. It has a gas geyser. It's a pretty tight little entrance here. The middle of the map is completely open. There's this nifty looking crescent, but this is all traversable terrain. There's these awkward 5 mineral patch expansions that are like right next to the center of the map. But the reason Outsider is a famous map is because it has this outside ring to it. Again, lower ramp, mineral field, gas, gas, mineral field. And if you mine through this mineral field and this mineral field, notice that this ramp here connects all the way to this ramp here, which is then Bisu's base. Woo! Woo! Yeah! All right! Similarly, notice down ramp. Minerals, gas, gas, minerals. Woo! Entrance into the bottom base. It's a 3-player map. So basically, there is this weirdness of this outside ring where drops are very strong. Weird, aggressive possibilities. Absolutely a threat. And then you have this more traditional inside ring of a natural expansion, a vulnerable mineral third, and a big-ass open center. So, what's so interesting, no, not that one, about this particular game's opening? Well, Bisu's going to go for one of the openings we looked at in the second episode of Protoss vs. Terran, the, 5 openings for each race, or I think maybe 6 for each. It is a Nexus on 12 followed by a gateway. What's nice about this typically can defend against a lot of more normal aggression, and it gets you a super fast gateway, or excuse me, a super fast Nexus, and we love money. Money, 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 money. Up here, Iris is doing a ridiculously normal-looking opening of barracks into gas geyser. He's going to be getting a factory. Oh my gosh, he's getting a supply depot. Look, there's the factory. Cool. But Iris scouts Nexus first. What the hell do you do against Nexus first? Well, remember, Iris is the Berserker, so he's just gonna start attacking right now. Pulls all but one out of the gas geyser. We see second gateway started. We're going to see a Zealot start in a moment, I think. Yep, there's the Zealot getting started. And you know what's a good counter to the Nexus? I think a bunker is a good counter to the Nexus. A bunker and a shitload of SCVs. Yeah, 7 SCVs. 7 SCVs plus this one makes 8 SCVs. 8 SCVs and a pile of Marines. Very, very difficult to stop. You'll have a Zealot. Dragoons won't be done yet. Very weird looking opening. How is this going to descend into normal play? Always have to ask that question. Vulture is being produced. Not an add-on yet, just a Vulture right off the bat to help against any number of Zealots. Probes, could they come to defend? Maybe. Right as the Dragoons pop out, the bunker finishes. This is a very nasty response to a Nexus first. If positions are sufficiently close, it can be pretty brutal. Iris does a key action that is so sexy. He retreats with almost all the SCVs. He needs to get back to a normal game plan, man. What's Bisu doing? Oh, yeah, he's getting 2 gateways. He's getting Dragoon range. Cool. How does Bisu defend this? The answer is he just lets it die. That's it, man. Weirdly, this is a pretty even exchange. Weirdly. Because Protoss, even though Protoss lost 400 minerals with the expansion, Protoss got to build a handful of extra probes. Terran had to pull 8 workers total before sending them back. Pretty even. Although typically we would say that the Terran has a little bit of favoritism here, due to the fact that he has done a good contain. Once Dragoon range is done, this bunker's done. One thing to note, though, is that on Outsider, this is not your only expansion. If this were a map like Circuit Breaker, I would feel horrible if I were Bisu, because I'd be like, oh shit, I'm locked in my own base, oh god. But Bisu's just going to be able to expand to this back door. Yay! Range done. A lot of Terran players will commit nothing else to this attack. That's not Iris, man. Are you kidding me? This is Iris, dude. He's the Berserker. He's building tanks. He's going to try to double down on this contain, baby. Okay. Proxy Robo Facility. This will be building Reavers and Shuttles to provide some harassment opportunities up along this back outside wall. Terran will often expand here because this is the expansion that's farthest away from his Protoss opponent. If Terran expands to here, then Protoss can easily just pick up Dragoons and set Dragoons here and shoot at the workers. So Terran typically expands here. Therefore, this is typically super annoying. What if Terran expands here? Well, cool. We still have a very droppable main base. But remember, these players do want to transition this into something normal looking. Now, if you're not Bisu, it's probably going to be hard for you to do this control trick where you bounce forward, back up, hit hold position, and pick the mine off. And that's okay. You don't have to be Bisu to succeed. You can just wait for the observers, my friend. Command center going down. Engineering bay going down. Look at this insane, weird, wiggly turn of events coming up that will now return back to a very calm-looking Terran vs. Protoss set of buildings. Still just producing. A little bit at a time here. Reaver upcoming. Bisu loves doing this style on Outsider. Look at this. So committed. Essentially, Iris wants to guarantee that no gassy expansion goes down. In many of the games that we've seen thus far, it has been lots of gas bases for both players. And so that means, you know, Arbiters, Dragoons, upgrades for Protoss, all the good stuff. But on this map, you'll note that here's a gas expansion, but this backdoor expansion is only minerals for Protoss. Until Protoss mines through to be able to mine out of this geyser, Protoss only has this one gas geyser. And if you're Terran, this will make you happy, because if I have one geyser as Terran and a bunch of leftover minerals, what am I going to make? Vultures. If you're Protoss and you have a bunch of leftover minerals, what are you going to make? Zealots. And if you have mass Vulture versus mass Zealot, the Vultures will be able to win that. So Iris has a justification for trying to really push this as much as he possibly can. But now we have a pretty sexy, pretty interesting game, huh? We have missile turrets hiding underneath the engineering bay. Starport up here. Now, why a starport? Why a starport right now? Obviously, dropships to be able to harass are one thing, but we want to have as many of our problems fixed with as few different parts as possible. We don't want to, for instance, build rings of turrets to stop this shuttle when we could get a single Wraith to defend against these obnoxious-ass Reaver drops, and then we don't need as many missile turrets. And we're still able to go for the dropships. So this is so annoying. This is part of the reason why people tend not to siege up until they have missile turrets done versus Reavers. Because it's easy to just lose it. So, alright, oh gosh, okay, more tanks getting produced, and a Wraith getting made. Good. What's this barracks doing floating over here? It's spotting for expansions. We have Gravitic Drive, the shuttle speed upgrade. I mean, Bisu's literally just massing shuttles and Reavers down here. There's another expansion. Woo! Yay! Protoss still wants to have the goal of what? Getting lots of bases. Lots and lots of bases, as much as humanly possible in terms of bases. And Terran still wants to get big, scary, doomed death army. And win with that big, doomed death army push. How the hell did this Vulture get here? You can do this glitch. I'll actually rewind it. Because we're at 9 minutes right now. Because day 9... Oh my god, his notes are so divine. You can do this glitch where you can do it by planting a mine, but this is a little more reliable. You place the Vulture in front of the minerals. You tell the SCV to mine minerals. There you go. You tell it to mine minerals, and then you hit stop, and it forces the Vulture through. Other ways to do this, if you're a probe and you build a pylon directly underneath yourself, it will force you through the mineral line. This is just cute. Because the Berserker always looks for a reason to attack. Attack, 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 attack. What I really like is that you still are seeing the same undercurrents of Dragoons are the largely defensive tool, lots of expansions is the big goal. But why does Bisu always like to go Reavers with speed shuttles on this map? Because he can do this. He can both harass the outside rim expansions and defend his very disparately located Deuterinos. So here's Bisu getting another good scanned angle here. We saw that Dragoons plus Zealots in a shuttle is a very effective defense early on. Now, I love the way that this is going to be multi-pronged. Bisu's just, oh, so artistic with this. Now, this shuttle's going to fall. And if I were Bisu, I would just throw everything and the kitchen sink at killing this thing off. AZK3000 said, didn't you say it's a bad idea to have 2 major units in 1 shuttle? I don't think I said that. If I said that, that's a total lie. I think I would say you don't need to wait for 2 major units to be in your shuttle. And look at this. The multi-pronged attack that's coming up from Bisu gets instantly shut down by the fact that there's a Wraith here. So good. So good. Typically, Bisu's going to be all sexy and hit 2 places at once. But instead, Bisu loses all of his shuttles. Oh, what a sweet play. Now, all of a sudden, Mr. Wraith can begin to be aggressive. There's a dropship here somewhere. I don't know where it is. But yeah, I have no idea why. It was once believed that I said don't have 2 major units in a shuttle, man. 2 Reavers in a shuttle is great. If I did say that before, I lied to you. I've been known to do that. Ah, here's the shuttle. Or excuse me, here's the dropship. So this is, I would say at this point in time, a very advantageous position to be in as Terran. You've denied this from mining completely. This was delayed for a long time. You've just killed off 2 shuttles, including one with the Reavers. And this expansion back here is starting to look a little bit low, and we can still harass it later. But one of my favorite mantras in all of StarCraft is just go fucking kill him, man. A big danger if you are up against a Terran who's harassing too much, attacking too much, being a little too cutesy, aka, I have a Wraith and I can kill off your shuttles with it. There he is. You can actually sometimes just walk into his base and kill him off. You can't both expand and have dropships and have Wraiths and have enough to defend your front. And this is something that is marvelous to watch out of Bisu. This is very different from Free's style, where Free is very efficient, very defensive. Bisu's constantly looking for opportunities to attack like this. And so, oh, I almost paused it right on time, 11:32. Let's take a look at the game right now, because this is insane, right? This is a weird game. Don't forget your fundamental principles, right? There we go. Don't forget your fundamental principles, okay? What's Terran trying to do? Build up a big death army. And what's Protoss trying to do? Get a lot of bases to overwhelm with lots of efficient units. So this attack from Protoss, this attack can be dangerous if you're Protoss. Because what if this dies? What if all these Protoss units die? We must be very careful that we then don't have low defenses to defend our expansions. Although I think that this is a very brilliantly timed attack and it has clearly broken through Iris's defenses, you must be very, very careful. In particular, whenever you're doing this sort of attack, what should be getting built? Dragoons, 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 Dragoons. Make sure you have enough Dragoons in case vultures come swinging at your front door. On the Terran side of things, if Terran can hold this off, you tend to be pretty happy if you're Terran. You've killed off a bunch of juicy Dragoons, and remember, the way that you win this game, if you're Terran, is by getting a really big, juicy force and marching across the map and ending the game with it. This is a great way to do that, to shut this down. There's this tank that's over here that was there to protect some of these vultures that were moving across. So if I'm Iris, I'm thinking, oh, hell yeah. This worked nicely. I might even build another command center at this point in time. There's one thing that you should have been noticing right as that attack began. One rather critical note. Bisu started this nexus as the attack was happening. Bisu's not losing sight of the fact that the whole point of this matchup for Protoss is to get lots and lots and lots of bases. It's to out-expand the Terran. It's to out-resource the Terran. Yes, Iris is being annoying and harassing this. Yes, Iris is being annoying and harassing this. But we did this attack, and that's great and all, but we need to make sure that we are continuing to expand. Iris, I think, is following up with this brilliantly by just taking another expansion here. Why does Bisu like this? Because it is good at both attacking and protecting. Another cute little move here from Iris. Attack, 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 attack. Attack, 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 attack. For as much as people really hate playing on this map, I love watching games on this map because of this exact reason. It's so difficult to manage all these varying attack paths. Okay, what do we think of this move? Great! Anytime Protoss expands, we're like, hurrah! How does he defend with this? Well, he's got a shuttle with a Reaver in it, and this has been a very, very busy robotics facility. I think he's actually, like, not ever let it stop building all game long. Good job, Iris. Iris is taking another base here. He's getting all these extended siege tank things. This upgrade is a little late. We always want relatively early upgrades as Terran. Iris tends not to. He tends to do mid-game timing pushes to end games. Tends to do mid-game timing pushes, but, I mean, you really got to get your damn upgrades at some point if you want this game to go on long enough. Though you might win with a mid-game timing push, you have to be able to say, and I needed to make sure that I have some way to follow up, because if I didn't have a good follow-up, that would be super doom. Here's another just great move out of Iris. Beautiful tactical maneuver. He killed off this Nexus by using this dropship to bring these two tanks over. And then as this big poke was coming up for Bisu, Iris just loads up those vultures and heads straight into the main base. Oops, I'm not hitting the play button. Dun, 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 dun. He's not going to be able to get through because Bisu has built a very intelligent wall up at this top side. Look at this. Remember the base management episode? Build walls, use your base to solve your problems? There you have it. Iris didn't lose any of that stuff, but did a good job. Just rebuilding all that shenaniganry. And now Bisu's expanding again. And I feel like this game highlights the absolute core, critical, big concept in this matchup, which is Protoss just keeps expanding, keeps building up gigantic armies. And for all the harassing that Terran's doing, he's got to be really careful that he's not just going to throw units away until he's behind. Great move, seeing all these Dragoons that were going to trap him. Spreads these vultures out. Vultures go, oh, I see, there's a robo facility here. The shuttles, the speed shuttles that had all zealots in them are now able to do a little bit of dropping here, try to prevent any sort of weird expanderage from happening. Here's the Arbiter out here. And if you look at the supply, once again, this rings a bell from the early Iris versus Bisu game that we saw, where Iris tried to open Medic Marine. Despite all of this crazy harassment that was going on from Iris, where he killed these bases, where he killed these probes, despite the fact that the shuttle with the Reaver in it was killed off here, despite the fact that all those Dragoons were trapped up in this top side and Iris killed them off, Bisu has a significant lead. Now, this just looks weird if you come from other RTS games, this spot right here, where it feels almost morally wrong for Protoss to have a lead right here. But the whole point for Protoss is to just get more bases. Get lots and lots and lots of bases. And the whole point for Terran is to build up a big death army and do big timing pushes. Now, harassing is great. Harassing can contribute to those goals, but harassing is not the satisfaction of those goals. I thought this was a very valuable game to showcase for this moment right here, where, I mean, you gotta be impressed with how tenacious Iris is, and how impressive this is. And Bisu's like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, no, look at this. Right after there was a brief moment of stability, Bisu's like, expand, 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 and then wait a little bit and expand again. I just whiffed the big recall at 18 minutes because I'm excellent at my job. Ugh. But, yeah, Bisu just recalls in. He can walk here, recall, and you'll notice that there's a spot in between the minerals because they've mined out. And this is not really, like, you know, game-ending damage because this expansion is empty, right? But it sure does make Terran hesitant to move out of his base because there's an army at the backside. So here, Iris is sort of turtled in. Okay, Iris is going to re-expand up to this top side. I mean, hell, we've done some harassing here. Bisu's going to poke on this side. Well, that's kind of stinks that I couldn't break through, but, you know, 10 gateways in the main base. There's another 6 down here, yep. So let's expand again. Oh, look. How'd this happen? An Arbiter just marched over there and recalled. Arbiters are like 10 times more obnoxious on this map than on any other map. And I find this moment of the game to actually be hilarious. Because we see, okay, there's more speed shuttles doing dropsy thingies, and then we see some allocation of units over here. We see, oh, tons of mines, wall-offs, tanks, wall-offs. Oh, yeah. And I said this, I think, on the very second episode of Let's Learn StarCraft, where I said that this is not a game about efficiency. It's a game about money. We're about to see this come true. Because these types of harassment attacks are hyper-efficient for Iris. Killing off probes, getting tanks on high grounds. Oh, that's so annoying. Getting good trades up here. And if Bisu attacks through this is going to be like the most inefficient attack. So he just attacks right through here. La la la. All these just get eaten alive. Tanks on the high ground. Mines supporting them. No problem. We are thrilled to do this as Protoss. We're over the moon to do this because we killed off a bunch of SCVs and we've denied some expanding. Great. Can't get this base over here. Alright. Quickly, rebuild. Quickly. Well, we can't do it as quickly as Protoss because we only have 6 factories. We don't have like 9 or 10 or something like that. That would be in a Flash-esque game. Oh, more recalling here. Completely inefficient for Protoss, losing way more money than he's gaining. Oh, wait. Hip, hip. 1A. Lots of interesting tactics coming in out of both players this game. But Bisu eventually just expanded a shitload and conquered everything. Let's see. What is the next one? Ah, excellent. Got one more one that I want to show you, which is, I think, a much more beautiful, unstable, fast game. What is the number of this? It's 2352. 2352. Come on. Where is it? 2352. Go, Day 9. Day 9, go! Oh my god! I want to show one more game that has a slightly weird-looking opening to it. This is, again, between Free and Last. It looks very different than those first 2 Free and Last games that we saw. Yo, man, SC says, I need to take a 30-second break so I can clean up the kitchen before my girlfriend gets home. No, hell no, we're not doing that. I'm actually probably going to go a little late today, because I want to show all sorts of games. And these games are not being reviewed at a ridiculously in-depth level. I'm trying to hammer home these concepts of how the opening transitions into the mid-game, how openings interact with one another, how various openings have strengths and weaknesses against each other, and also to see some of the tactics that we've been talking about all get showcased in a series of games that have it all. Alright, so what do we think about this opening? Free is not doing some super probe cutty aggro opening. He goes for Pylon Gateway, but then builds a Zealot, and then builds another Zealot, and then gets this Assimilator. up and running. After which Free is going to build a cybernetics core. Well, as we've seen out of Last is doing this opening that he did as the very first game of the day, where he is pulling SCVs out of his gas geyser to make sure that he can afford a command center. You heard me talk quite a lot about zealot rushes and how building placement is important for solving those. You see these Marines just kind of walking around the buildings. La 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 la. I mean, not even pulling SCVs, just walking in circles around the building. Marines can also fit through this crack, but Zealots cannot. Great. Sees a second Zealot. Alright. Building a Vulture. You can see I have all these units selected just to show the health of all of them. Very calm micro. Just defending it calmly. Alright, so what's Last going to do now? Well, Last is probably just going to build a command center, dude. He's probably just going to build a command center and a tank and get some mines. If you look in Free's base, Free is getting range, he's getting Dragoons, and he's about to expand. Free's opening kind of just pulled back to look like that regular old Dragoon range opening build. Here's a Zealot trying to find some juicy opportunity to harass, and actually manages to get 2 Marines, which is pretty nice. I think this is pretty interesting because it's a little uncharacteristic of Last. I've had the opportunity to watch just like hundreds of Last games, and he really likes his bases, man. He is a big macro-ass Terran, man. He's great. In this particular game, he's like, you know, it was an aggressive opening. I don't really know if he's going to follow it up with more gateways of aggression or maybe with some other play. So he gets a second factory, which, right off the bat, this is a very strong defensive move. Like, I'm not sure what he's doing, so I'm just going to get a lot of units. Sure. But it's the way that Last follows this up that I'm very impressed by. So first of all, he takes that 1 Vulture. I can't believe he hasn't killed off a single probe yet. There are so many, like, very weak probes here. There we go. Takes his Vulture and just insta-scouts with it. Instantly tries to see what's up. Tank, Mine, and Marine all getting built again. Now, what we're seeing as a follow-up from Free is he has the Dragoon range done, and he's going for Dark Templar after this. Alright, so that whole idea of using the kiting range micro, it's working beautifully here. Now, if you're Last, you got to be very careful that you don't actually walk yourself into a corner by not getting enough of an economy up. This type of push is fine, sure, this is great, but if you don't get this base and don't start building up for a death army, you're gonna be in trouble, man. So this is a really interesting follow-up from Free. What is this robo facility for? Well, certainly it will be used for observers, which is great for transitioning into a normal mid-game. But instead it's Dark Templar, both for defense, and then the shuttle drop for the offense. And this is one thing that I just love so much about watching Last in almost all of these early game situations. Like, he's expanding. He's not forgetting that he needs to get a base up early on in this game. But he's just barreling in there, man. We see an attempted mine drag be half successful. I think there's actually a spider mine right underneath these tanks, which is dangerous. No, I'm totally wrong. The Dark Templar will defend against these tanks, which is nice. But now there's this big Vulture problem, man. This is the problem of not having Dragoons in the early game. Meanwhile, back in the base, there's no detection. There is absolutely not any detection in the slightest. Very easy to lose your shit and to think that you're about to die. But Lash just continues to rally in vultures. And you're like, what are you really going to do here? What's really going to end this game? Is it going to be Dark Templar defending against these vultures? Well, dude, I mean, just look at what's going on in this main base. Free does try to do something that's very sneaky. And he tries to just drop the vulture right back in Lash's main base. So this Dark Templar does drop. But this is kind of where, if you're Terran, you need to make an intelligent judgment call, which is basically that you're in a good position. Economically speaking, you have really messed up this expansion. You've killed a bunch of probes in the main base. You still have the opportunity to waltz in here with vultures and end the game. You just way overbuild missile turrets. Just build like 4 at once. There is literally no physical way possible to defend against all of this. You can do this cute stuff where you float the engineering bay on top of the missile turret, and then the Dark Templar can't target it. All the SCVs are clustered around this missile turret, so that way the DT can't get picked off. And Free has to say GG. Pretty cool. Pretty cool game. Now, was there one more? Okay. So there is... Let's see here. There's a carrier game. Bisu Sharp 071, I think is it. Bisu PVT. Bisu vs Sharp 071. Now, I'm going to go through this game slightly more quickly, because we got the chance to see this game a little bit already in the carrier video. But I want to talk about it in the context of the matchup at large, just the broad ideas of the matchup, just to make sure that we're continuing to hammer home. And after this, we're just going to try to find a game that I haven't seen yet in these replay packs. We're just going to legit watch it and analyze it in the moment. So this is a Citadel of a Dune. Bisu was starting things off, going for a Dark Templar rush, and just said, dude, it's been scouted, screw it. He just cancels and goes back to a normal game. And so we see the mines getting researched. We see the same sort of look of 4 Marines. We see the tank coming out. Excellent. Mine gets planted. Now, if you're Sharp, you're not entirely certain that you're not up against a super Dark Templar rush. That's why these mines are getting placed at these different angles. Oops. Oops, I just disabled all vision on the map. And this is kind of a bold, risky opening out of Sharp, where Sharp is getting 3 command centers at the expansion on just 1 factory. However, he's banking on the fact that he saw a Citadel, he sees now Dragoons with range, and he's been able to plant all these mines, and he's still not getting swept. So, if your opponent is ever going for like a 1-gate expand, there's really not that much that Protoss can do against vultures with mines early. However, you still need to make sure you pull back and you start getting some damn tanks, because right now there is no tanks on the map. So what would we expect to be different from some of the previous openings that we've been looking at? Well, probably it's going to be like a lot of tank production. Probably can't be building more vultures and doing sneaky things with it. These 4 vultures are really nice, not as damage dealers, but as like insurance. Like, yeah, you might want to come and try to attack me, but I'm going to keep messing with you as much as humanly possible. So Bisu's been slowly trying to make his way outward. 3 gateways. Nice. Third base, nice. But I'd actually say way more nice is Sharp's position right now. Sharp's getting an armory. Sharp's starting to realize, all right, man, I'm up against a guy who's I'm kind of in turtley mode. I'm going to build a missile turret here. Probably need to be super careful against any sort of zealot bombs moving in. A zealot bomb is the zealots and the shuttle dropping on the tanks. And now it's like all tank production, man. A few extra vultures just trying to push back. But here we see the infamous Stargate tech to go straight into carriers. This is another very normal looking game, especially at this particular point in time. Bisu's still has the Dragoons sweeping, trying to find anywhere where there's mines and to delete them to make sure that there's no vision. These pylons are providing nice walls. The carriers are coming out. Oh, glory! What's this shuttle for? This shuttle is, of course, to load up these 4 zealots that are coming up right now. Big explosion of factories. What's the most common number? I'd say 8 or 9. 8 if you have a mineral-only expansion without that many minerals at it. 9 is a little more common. I don't know what these Marines are getting built for. I truly don't. More vultures just moving around trying to plant mines, because if there's mines right here, you know that you can walk to this location fast and safely, because he hasn't killed them off yet. There's nothing there. And here's the big moment where the carriers pop out, and if you saw that carrier game, you heard me talk so much about how important it is to just go attack, man. Just to move out. There's really not that many Dragoons. Nowadays, Terrans are very diligent about getting 2 and 3 bases up, so that way they can macro really hard and have a ton of stuff. And just having a handful of Goliaths is great, is excellent. Siege up, shove back, pick off interceptors, no problem, feels good. And this is, again, classic Bisu, man. Bisu's like, alright, well, couldn't manage to break in. I'll run around to the backside and do weird counterattacky things with Dragoons. In the meantime, just building up carriers, building up carriers, building up carriers. The name of the game is a little different for Protoss in this particular position. Protoss is much more so looking to try to sit defensively and build up a massive carrier army. Because once the carrier count gets to like 8, there's almost nothing that Terran can do, unless Terran really has a crap load of bases up. So Sharp's doing a number of very intelligent things. He's taking this expansion in an area that's relatively easy for him to defend with his big-ass army. Toast Brat says, didn't we see this game already in the carrier episode? Nope, absolutely did. Absolutely did. Just trying to connect it thematically to the other games that we've seen today. In particular, you're noticing that Terran now has a lot more bases, and Protoss has a lot fewer bases than any of the stuff we've seen. There's still quite a lot of gateways, but again, this is the big shift of going carriers compared to going for expansion plus arbiter. This is a much beefier, tankier army from the Protoss side of things. This army actually can go toe-to-toe with a Terran army. It just needs lots of time to build up to a significant amount of carriers. And you've heard me talk a little bit about how you use Dragoons to pick off straggling vultures and mines in a typical match, and you try to do lots of nice little broad contains and stuff. You wind up being much more counter-attacky, much more trying to pick off of Goliaths, get smaller engagements, and then back away again. And even though this is a very awkward-looking position for Protoss to be in, Terran kind of has to, I don't want to say answer this, but has to be very thoughtful about it. This moment in the game, I think the correct decision to do is to either let this die or lift and run, and then to take the bulk of these forces and just go attack this. I think if you're Terran, you need to just not be so defensive, because you just can't afford to let these carriers build up in large numbers. I think it's kind of easy to fall into the trap of doing this a little too often if you're Terran. I don't think this is, like, horrific, but being attack-minded. And this is in the same way that Protoss is playing much more defensively, much more carefully, much more low on base count. Terran's also playing much higher on base count, trying to get as many expansions up as possible, being a lot less worried about getting into good positions with the tanks to be able to do super slow pushes, and is much more just about attack, 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 attack. This is, again, another crazy counterattack. Why does this sort of thing actually work? In a normal Terran vs. Protoss, this works, these sorts of counterattacks, because you're trying to out-resource the Terran. The reason this is good is Protoss is just trying to get to, like, 10 carriers. Just trying to build up to get to 10 invincible-ass carriers and win that way. It's about massive values. And one of the sexiest plays of the entire game, I feel like this is the play. Bisu just walks up here and kills off this expansion, and then wiggles his way out again, while doing these weird Dragoon counterattacks up here, man. So even though Sharp has killed this off, has locked Protoss onto all 3 bases, Protoss has kind of gotten to build up the mass carrier army he's been striving for all game long. We talked a little bit about that carrier micro in the carrier episode. I really appreciate the fact that Bisu is doing careful snipes, picking off this Goliath, now picking off this Goliath, now picking off this Goliath, now picking off this Goliath on top. Just literally one Goliath at a time. It's weird to think of carriers as a snipery unit, but that's how they function. What time are we at? 6:52? Let's try to find if there's a Bisu Flash game. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I haven't even looked to see if there's a Bisu Flash game in my replays. Ooh. And even though Sharp, I think, played very godlike in the opening game in order to get all those bases up, Bisu just did the insane tactics until he has the death squad of Dragoon High Templar Carrier, and that's GG. God, this game impressed the hell out of me. This is like one of my favorite games I've seen in these packs. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to close my screen, so that way you can gaze and be amazed at the flash, or at the, see, the Bisu replays. Let's scroll through here and see if there's any Bisu Flash games. There's the Iris Bisu games we were looking at. There's some games against Smile. I don't think there's... Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any games here. Oh, no. No! Well, there's some Bisu last games, but let's actually see if we can find... Let's look at last games in TvP versus Bisu. There we go. We've been looking primarily at the... games between Last and a Protoss, and then Bisu and a Terran. But now let's look at Bisu the Protoss versus Last the Terran. Let's watch 2 of their games and try to analyze both the opening, how they converge to the mid-game, and some of the tactics that are involved that we've talked about in some of those micro-segments. Alright. Barracks getting built. No problem. Alright, let's go ahead and just stare at the Terran base, see if he's going to do anything interesting. And stare at the Protoss base, see if he's going to do anything interesting. Divergence points can happen soon. Aha, okay, cool. It looks like it's 1 gate range. And over here for Last, it looks like he's going for his super fast command center expando build. This is something that's fun to watch in terms of these 2 players. Is Bisu pretty much just goes 1 gate Dragoon in a lot of his normal games. And Last pretty much goes 1 factory expo in most of his games. Here it comes, boop. Machine shop add-ons getting done. There's a tank coming up. Come on, boop. Probably mines coming up in a second once it gets to 100. Oh. Whoa. Crazy. He built a supply depot. Yep, there's mines coming up. Again, mines are the upgrade of choice. And it looks like we have ourselves a pretty typical opening. Bisu's really fun to watch with his early Dragoons. He gets so aggressive. He just, like, pushes up the ramp, takes some shield damage, no problem. I'll reheal those. Rearrange the Dragoons to make sure that the stronger ones are in the front. And at this point in the game, you would think that you're going to be as passive as possible, but Bisu just tries as hard as he can to find any opportunities to pick stuff off. With 2 tanks, no way. That just deals too much damage. The land, the mines are going to get planted. And a little teensy, I think just like sort of a pokey push. Yeah, he just walks forward and he's like, nah, nope, not going to do it. So, it's 2 gateway, it's observers. This looks a lot like a Protoss player that wants to get an expansion. I think it's very risky to go 1 gate, expand, expand. Certainly an acceptable opening, it's just a little risky. Comsats going down, engineering bays. This is the most stable style that you can do. Again, 2 factories. Scans to see what the hell's going on. Early mines, not just for defense, but also to do stuff like this. Bisu's doing his classical move of getting a Nexus at his 3rd very quickly. This is very different from Free. You'll recall that Free built 2 more gateways, began teching towards Arbiters first. Bisu tends to be a little bit more expo heavy. You can also see that this machine shop is just now researching siege mode. Bringing turrets to prevent any sort of scouting from Bisu, but you know, if you're Bisu, you're not really scouting to see what's going on inside the base. You're more so scouting to see when this 3rd is going down. Stargate. Ah, there it is. Bisu returns back to getting 4 gates, just as Free did, but this 3rd base from Bisu's much faster. Now Stargate, en route. I'm very curious what happens in the rest of this game, because it just does not go on that much longer. Where is this? Cat. Ah, there it is. There is the armory. Engineering bay and barracks, guarding the front. 3rd base incoming. And Bisu's just sweeping as much as he can. No way! Bisu goes carriers in this game? Okay. Alright. It looks like it's a carrier game. I would have strongly suspected that he was going for Arbiters. Very strongly suspected. Okay. So the game plan is pretty clear. If you're Terran, you're going to be wanting to scan as much as possible. This is a common place to build carriers. This is a common place to build all your gateways, because there's just not a lot of room in these areas in which to build any of that. So you scan here, you pretty much know what the Protoss is doing. We talked about in the carrier episode, it's like super important not to just go super ham on anti-carrier tech. Keep making the tanks, keep making the vultures. Just chill a little bit. Oh, I remember a game that I wanted to show. There's this awesome game. Super awesome, super sexy, long game that is the perfect one to close this thing out on. It's the perfect one! Alright, carriers out. Boom, boom. More carriers getting produced. Bam, bam. Bisu is not one to really hide carriers. He's like, dude, you should be able to see these carriers. You should at all times be able to know that I'm going carriers. So I'm just going to attack with them as early as I can. No way. What happens? Is this the end of the game? Wait, are you serious? Oh my god, no way. Did he actually literally not see this at all? Okay, well. Guys, in case you were ever worried that you would lose a dumb game to carriers coming in when you didn't expect it, here is the 2nd best Terran in the world just abruptly quitting. I'm so glad this isn't the last game. Oh my god, what a match! Oh, day 9, I loved it! Wow! Yeah, that was a real pain. Various pros. Various. I think it's the scan. It's one of these two. I think it's 791? Yeah, here we go. So this is M18M, who's just a very good Protoss under the name Dream T Brain, versus Scan Call, who is a streamer on Twitch, streams all the damn time. Super all the damn time. And this opening, this entire game is just fantastic. It represents all the weird twists and turns that an opening can take, all the ways in which it can worm back to its position in the mid-game, and all the ways in which the game can sort of play out interestingly as the match goes on. So what we're going to see out of Scan, once again, you can find him streaming on Twitch all the damn time. Plays like 30 games a day or something ridiculous. He's going for the factory with just a few in the gas geyser, or I should say just one in the gas geyser initially. Marines at the front to spot the probe. Why this single vulture at the start? Well, the Marines are pulling back to the high ground just to make sure that they don't die to any sort of weird Dragoon stuffs. And there's the command center coming up. But this vulture is very good at coming in at a skew angle in order to see an expansion incoming. It's kind of hard to see what's in the corner, but it's just supply depots. I really do not like that this UI is flush with the bottom of the map instead of letting me be able to see. I wish that this was the bottom of the map instead of behind here, because it's so weird to see like command centers and barracks behind the UI and to be unable to scroll down. So, alright. 2 gateways early on. What's the difference between 1 gateway and 2 gateway openings? Well, the 2 gateways are just a little bit better at defending early pushes. Robotics facility coming up. We see mines getting built. That's nothing out of the ordinary. Second factory getting built. But here is the interesting switch. Two additional factories are built to go up to 3 factories. Why would Scan do this? Well, first of all, he's sacrificing building an engineering bay and building an academy. These are necessary versus things like shuttles, Reavers, Dark Templar. Well, he used that early Vulture to kind of see what's going on, and it looks kind of like a 1 or 2 gateway expand. So coming up next is highly likely going to be either observers with more Dragoons, which would be standard, or if there are Reavers and Dark Templar coming, they're going to be delayed. Vultures getting built 3 at a time. We see a delayed engineering day, which is fine, which is totally fine. Scan is now moving out across the map in order to do some aggressive stuffs. That first Vulture planted some very nice mines, which allows Scan to move pretty aggressively forward. We see 4 gateways. We see the pretty fast Arbiter, again akin to what Free was doing in our first 2 games. And then a super aggressive early push. Now there's no siege mode on these tanks. The tanks are just sort of here to provide extra long range. Tanks have a range of 7, Dragoons will have an upgraded range of 6. These Dragoons are trying to stampede through to not just set off all the mines, but also to maybe do a mine drag, which happened successfully here. And I think M18's positioning was maybe even a little too conservative. M18 could have been farther out on the map with all these Dragoons, but the fact that he built 4 gateways early on allowed him to hold off against this just fine. So this is why it's always so important if you're Protoss to have a good sense of how many factories your Terran opponent has, so that way you can just literally build enough stuff, because M18M just, M81M, I can never remember if it's 18 or 81 because those look the exact same to me. Protoss just kind of holds it, and it's fine. It's like not a problem. But what is Scan doing? Scan is taking a third. Scan will be building a armory in a moment. And is kind of just pulling back to a normal-looking passive position on 3 bases, getting ready for a big, scary Doom push. So who came out ahead or behind in that exchange? I feel like it was relatively even, just due to the fact that a lot of units were lost on both sides. And Scan has a plan in order to take his next big thing. And this is an absolutely critical idea that's being presented here by Scan. Scan is taking a third base. He's not just trying to win the game on 3 factories and figure it out later. This third base was actually completed in the middle of this push, still ongoing. Here is the armory in order to get the big, thick, juicy, meaty upgrades. And this game is the penultimate version of Protoss is trying to get resources. Terran is trying to get the big, scary army. Protoss is going to lose almost every single fight this game. I'm going to tell you in advance. It's going to lose almost every single fight this game, but what's going to make it even is that Protoss is going to get so damn much money, man. Largely Dragoons, some Arbiters to support, and as those armies get larger, it's going to return back to Zealots. Some upgrades for Protoss. Upgrades are much less pivotal for Protoss compared to Terran. Terran upgrades actually are essential because these tanks get +5 per each upgrade. So they go from 70 to 85, so it's like 2 shots from a tank plus some splash can kill a Dragoon instead of 3 shots from a tank. Continued sweeping with Dragoons. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Look at this, we even have Gravitic Booster for faster observer movement. Hell yeah. Now, if you are playing very super value, super efficiency, you want photon cannons right in this mineral patch to defend against vultures. If you're playing like Best, who kind of mass expands, you more so just want buildings to wall off, and you want to spend less money doing anything like you don't want to waste money on cannons, man. You want to build more gateways. So this little poof right here is an Arbiter that just died. And you see Scan is more than well prepared. He's got an army of turrets. He's got a barracks floating over here to pick this off. He's continuing to ramp up his factory production. He has 2 armories with his science facility almost done for the mega upgrades. Giant wall of turrets here. It's kind of hard to even see where the hell you would puncture in there. I'm really excited for this upcoming push from Scan because it's just so nice the way he does it. Oh, it's so marvelous. Another expansion for Protoss. And look at how many gateways are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Just a ton of gateways. Just pure meaty macro. There's some small drop harass happening here. This is really nice. It's very low on commitment. That is hilarious, but not really the biggest deal. Protoss will be able to clean that up anyways. So what's the plan? What's the plan if you're Scan? Scan is preparing for a gigantic push that we've been seeing a lot of Terran players doing throughout the evening of StarCraft. Protoss, as we've seen, is going to continuously expand. But take a look at the money. Protoss is sitting at 4K, 1.5K. And isn't moving in. There's just not really an angle that you can even hit. Crap load of Zealots moving up here to clear out this. And a probe that's going to expand. Bunch of gateways getting produced down here. Awesome. Just more macro. And here comes the push from Scan. Oh. Oh. Okay. Just a handful of Goliaths. Alright, a few mines get placed. Not just spamming mines. And if you're a Terran, you're feeling pretty comfortable. Back home, you're surrounded by turrets here. Up at this top, you're surrounded by turrets here. You got Widow mines everywhere just in case. There's something very important about the fact that Terran has, or excuse me, Protoss is expanded to opposite corners of the map. Protoss is not clumping all his stuff together, and this is going to play out for the rest of the game. The game is not even halfway done at this point. Massive scans to see wherever there's vulnerability. It's a little dangerous for Terran to move to the right here because there's so many mines. M18's just playing defensive, just waiting. More gateways getting produced. There's now 18 gateways in the main base, and another 5 down here makes 23 gateways. 24. Any others? Okay, cool. So Terran has to be a little careful when moving over mines, but oh my gosh, this next play is just orgasmic. I love this. Okay, this is proper awesome Terran push moving doing. Moves to the right to throw down a whole bunch of mines, and now there's a little wall of mines here and a little wall of mines here, and then Terran pushes up through the middle. Oh yes. Oh my god. So not only is Terran not making the error of pushing over the mines, but Terran is also setting himself up to have a whole bunch of mines defending a key flank from behind. And while Terran's doing this, notice the great wall of blue in the middle. See, there's some blue, there's some blue, there's some blue. And he's expanding behind the wall. Oh! Problem is that Protoss just identifies that there's a few clusters of tanks, throws down some good old stasis on those, and begins to bomb in there. So typically we would anticipate that Terran should win this fight straight up, but now that there's about 10 tanks stasised, it's a little difficult to do as much. Look at the good old 15 Protoss Zealots in the production queue, 20 Protoss Zealots in the production queue. Sort of staged stasising. So Protoss has not really won this fight yet. Now he's getting the opportunity to be able to sort of clean these tanks up. But there's just so many blue units pouring in here. The thing that we are seeing the Protoss do excellently is the Protoss is counterattacking here. Killing this off. Scan eventually reinforced this mid so much, but Scan wound up still not losing the position, was still able to push forward. I think that, like, literally not until the very end of the game does Protoss ever, like, actually wipe a full Terran army. Terran always just has some stragglers and can continue to push forward, and it's Protoss that has to be constantly rebuilding. So we're getting some more gateways, 25, 26. We're building any more? Oh, 27. Alright. Typical little 27. 27 dude. 27 gateway build up. So yet again, Scan rebuilds. A massive death push army. Kinda some significant clusters here. Which Protoss completely identifies. And here's where we start to see just some really nice play out of Scan. I just so admire the way that Scan plays this portion of the game out. So Scan just starts to identify, okay, where are their Protoss weak forces? Okay, I can just flood with vultures and move up here. Protoss is going to try to hurl his army at here. This is incredibly inefficient for Protoss to move through this bottom side flank like this with that many tanks there that are now 3-2. I mean, Protoss is getting just pretty shit on here. A few Zealots are getting in, which means that the splash damage is enough to pick off the tanks. But a lot of what makes Terran function in these really big late game spots is to get into positions where you can have your main army fighting his main army, and then you break off tiny pieces like this. Tiny little chunks of Terran units here. And Scan, interestingly, expands to the middle, which, as it turns out, is actually kind of the only safe place for him to expand to at this point in time. So this is a nice push here. But M18 literally has to rely on a recall to be able to affect this. Now there's still there's still 18 gateways in the main pumping out units. But suddenly this small force from Scan that moved up to this top side to try to take out this expansion, which is completely correct, which is a great thing to do. What did it need? One science vessel to EMP that Arbiter that was coming in, and then this would have been a dead expansion. But this is the problem. This is what makes Protoss work really nicely against Terran, is when Protoss can spread themselves out, which is exactly what you're supposed to do if you're Protoss against Terran. Take lots of bases, spread out, and then rely a lot on counterattacking, attacking wherever you spot weakness. Here, Protoss smells a little weakness here, maybe tries to poke. Oh, doesn't manage to find it. What about if I float in here? Nope. Scan, just really good solid defense. 10,000 in the bank, but look at the money in Scan's bank. It's a 1,800. They're both essentially maxed, with Scan having this middle. More mines going down, more gateways going down. Why not just keep jamming all the gateways in the main base? Well, just being able to have production coming from multiple sides lets you hit Terran from multiple angles. So Terran's trying to establish control of this base. Awesome. Great plan. Especially if Terran can dovetail that into killing off of these bottom two right expansions. Like this fight, oh my gosh, does it go poorly for Protoss. Woo! Woo! So, how does Protoss try to defend this? Well, Protoss is going to look for any angle that he can. He's in fact going to try to pierce through this top side. And you'll see it does elicit a response from Scan. Remember that Iris Bisu game where Iris was defending Bisu's big bomb up into the main base? And I was like, yeah, no, Terran's actually pretty happy with this. Like, Terran would be pretty happy to take all these units and clean up all these Protoss units. And then a small set of stragglers just moves forward to pick off this base. The Dragoons are kind of jamming themselves up against the back wall, just anything to peel units away. This is a pretty significant problem for Protoss, that Terran actually has this bottom expansion. And now this is all about the bottom right area. If Terran can not only kill this off, but also start taking these bottom right sides, this is going to be a disaster. So this is a recall that wound up getting thrown down from... Where's the Arbiter at? Lost track of the Arbiter. There he is. There's Mr. Arbiter that just recalled in. This type of move does not look like it's actually doing anything, right? Because it's killing off an expansion that doesn't matter that much. But let's see how this sort of plays out as the game goes on. Just great, incredibly annoying tactics by M81M, or M18M, whatever it is. So this particular move forward by Scan is... I feel like this is slightly questionable, because on one hand, what is this doing? It's containing all of these barracks. It would be just a real problem if there were a bunch of mines here and the tanks have walled it in. Yuck. What would you do as Protoss in that spot? But I think this is a little overextended, because if one Arbiter recalls on top of these dudes, you can be in pretty bad shape. So Scan is doing this giant, scary blob army, but here is the money Arbiter. Or is it this one? It might be one slightly later in the game. There it is. No, this one is it. Scan actually just missed the EMP by just a few energy. So suddenly, there is a huge force in the back base for Scan. So Scan is suddenly kind of stuck between a little bit of a rock and a hard place. He used to have a big force down here, and Scan just decides, okay, well maybe let me try to kill off this top left expansion now. Scan still has this bottom one. Still kind of needs to pressure this middle one, and there's still $14,000 in the bank for Dream Team Brain, man. Just kill this off. Kill off the, huge tank push trying to come in here. Just pick off this expansion. And I really love when you watch a top Terran play, and they don't quite focus on these mains as much. They really just try to kill off the front expansions as much as possible, just to eventually starve the Protoss out. And just as we were saying before, one EMP could have made this a dead base, but nope. Continued recalls. And now if you look at the money, Scan's actually kinda running out of cash. Not just in terms of like what he actually has, but like this center area is starting to get a little dry. This bottom area is really the only thing that's a stable source of steady income. Finally, this base goes down. There's a lot of minerals that Protoss got out of this, despite how fast Terran took all this out. When you're macroing out of like 20 some odd gateways, getting remaxed as Protoss does not actually take that much time. Despite the fact that Protoss has lost every single straight up engagement. Has maybe picked off a few tanks here and there that were trying to get kills on bases and stuff like that. In this position, man, M81 is just continuing to rebuild again and again and again and just flood in again and again. And then here, he has a half army that he sends down to this bottom side. Amazingly breaks through. Has enough energy to storm. Kills off a bunch of stuff. And then this is a good trigger for M81 to just begin pushing in from this side. It's just constant hit here, run somewhere else, hit here, run somewhere else, hit here. Even this weird, useless, empty base broke way to get into the main. Yet another expansion's coming up, and this is one of the most impressive things. I even included this in my notes. Watch the probe transfer at 33 minutes. So all these units killed this off. This bottom right main is mined out. And all these probes move all the way up to this gas geyser. The incredible journey. And once they get here, they retransfer over to this expansion that Scan is now trying to take. And just as there's this huge expansion, or excuse me, this huge force of tanks, I mean, look at that. God. Just there's this huge thing going on. Big Arbiter recall down here. The Zealots and Storms that were able to move in here and detect weakness. Oh yeah, it just follows up with an Arbiter, man. Yeah, this expansion dies. Yeah, all those probes die. But, whew. If you're a Scan, look, just watch this mineral amount for Scan. It is not going up very much at all. This is kinda it, this expansion. And look at this play. He doesn't want this force to get up, so he puts a probe there and he stasis it. Look at this shit, man! He stasis the probe on the ramp so that way he can't actually get up. Oh. And meanwhile, Protoss takes the opportunity to just bomb through the middle of the map, now with a seemingly larger force. You push up to this top side, I expand down to the bottom side. Oh, by the way, Protoss lost an entire army again. Less probes, more army. That's what Neeb taught us. I think that there actually is a successful kill on this top expansion. Uh-oh. The endless recalls come in. Again, just, like, by and large, murdered. Like, Protoss lost the shit out of that fight. But that's okay. That's actually okay, because now not only does Protoss reestablish control of this little base here, Protoss can actually take this here, and Protoss has $1 billion in the bank still. Still 10k in the bank. Still just sending in tons of units. Let's see, we're building... Yeah, building, just look at that, about 20 units all at once. That's nice. Like, super epic game. So now Terran has this weird catch-22 where he needs to dedicate all his defenses to up here so he can get stuff out of these bases. But all his factories are down here. And he has this kind of long, straggly path to go in order to get there. And every Arbiter is a gigantic threat. Look, just long-distance recalls in. And without any resources or any ways to get any more expansions, Scan is forced to concede the game. Oh yeah, and Scan killed off all the probes here. This guy's 1 kill, this guy's 3 kills. There's like no probes left. This is a very pure demonstration of the fundamentals of long-term play in this matchup, where it's really the Protoss has the freedom to be able to take as many bases as he can, really. And Terran has to do his best to just defend all these varying locations and then try to pressure them at the same time. And whew, I mean, despite the fact that Protoss was at like 15k, Protoss ended at 3k with no mining base. Not really a mining base. I mean, a huge army, but whew. Alright, exit the program, StarCraft. I have to eat dinner. I need to eat some tasty food. So I like this final game because it shows not just an interesting opening from Terran transitioning into a 3-base standard stable play. Not only does it show Protoss also dealing with this pressure and then transitioning into that play, but it shows the importance of the mid-game, how they both hit this stable spot, and how they branch into kind of like the really basic core conceptuals of the matchup, which is the mobile army gets a lot of bases, the immobile army has to be very thoughtful and careful about how they do that. I'm going to go because it's 7:30 and I'm very hungry. I really want to eat dinner. I've earned dinner. I deserve dinner. So I'm going to leave, and on Thursday we're going to take a look at Zerg vs. Terran core strategy. I hope that for all of you aspiring Protoss vs. Terraners on both sides, that this was a helpful review episode to sort of examine a whole bunch of different feels of Zerg vs. Terran, so that we can, Protoss vs. Terran, so we can really see varying layers that we've been talking about beforehand. And I know that there was not super in-depth about a lot of the timings of the openings and that sort of thing. Really just going for the big strokes and how it varies from game to game. And I'm going to leave now. Goodbye. You're all fantastic. Go play some more video games.